Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Dissertation Diaries. So in the first episode I spoke all about my proposal, from basically picking my topic to working on it, researching it, and then submitting that proposal. This episode is all about actually starting the dissertation and the research and how that's all going, and yeah. So now term has started, I'm really trying to focus back on my dissertation stuff. So what I have done is I've got a list of all the things that I want to do by the end of January / early February, which will basically be the contents for this video. So it's the 15th of January. Just come back from my dissertation supervision meeting, the first one of term 2. Actually went really well. Basically, I had an issue of where to put the law because my feedback from the proposal stated that I needed to put way more legal analysis into it. But then the format that I had, I didn't know where to put it because basically at the moment my chapter 1 is what is gene editing, chapter 2 is there enough information, chapter 3 is the ethical issues, and chapter 4 is what restraints and changes might need to be made in order to use it in the future. So I was where can I put the legal analysis into it? So we jigged it all around, so now I'm very happy about how to proceed from here on out. But it did make me realise how much work that I've got to do for it. I have so much just for the legal analysis alone. Probably going to end up reading easily 40, 50 different things, so and that's just 1,000 words of it. Best crack on. So it's the 20th of January. So basically I'm sitting down now to actually start doing research for my legal analysis and dissertation chapter 1 more generally. So you might be wondering how I'm actually going to tackle my first chapter. I'm also wondering that. So what I'm going to do today is focus on the legal analysis portion because I feel like that is the main chunk that makes up chapter 1, and if I get that right then all the ethical issues bounce off that bit basically. So if we mess it up, it's then the whole thing will fall apart and be a bit weak. So I'm trying to focus on that. What I'm going to do is write down a list of all the sources that I think that I'm going to need to read to do my legal analysis, and then crack on with it really. So the sources on this list comprised of the white paper for the legislation, the Hansard, analyses of the legislation, committee reports, policy reviews, law reviews, and reports on the law, as well as articles. Okay, so it's January 27th. Basically, today I had my group supervision. I think it's going to be the last one because of strides, not sure, don't know. Pretty much sums up how uni's going right now. And in it, we had to present our dissertation to the other people in my supervisor's group. I mean, there's only 3 of us. One's doing about surrogacy, one's doing about organ donation. Obviously, I'm doing gene editing. So it's interesting to hear what they all did. Anyway, in my supervision meeting, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, she was okay, the presentation is informal, but act like you're going to do it at a conference. You can get some practice and you should do it really professionally, da-da-da-da. So I sat and made slides, I legit made slides, okay? And I got up in this meeting and I was who wants to go first? And I was yeah, I'll do it. Banged up my slides. Did this full 15-minute presentation, okay? And then the other people in my group might as well have read it off the back of a napkin. I was are you telling me that I made slides for nothing? I could have literally got away with just winging it anyway. That's by the by. These are the slides that I made. Obviously the question, and then it goes into the background. This is my new layout as well. So you know how I said that I didn't know where the law was going to sit? I figured that out. So I'm going to do the first chapter all about what gene editing is, the background on it, whether there's enough information, all the scandals, then all the law, and do legal analysis, then about the ethical issues and bounce those two off each other to see which ethical issues were mentioned when the legislation was drafted and whether they're still relevant, and then what constraints should we have now, because the legislation was drafted almost 30 years ago. No, actually it was 30 years ago, bang on, because it was 1990, so see what's changed in methodology and etc. and ethics, and basically what I found so far, which is not much. okay, so it's like the 20th of February. I have completed all of my research for the legal analysis chapter, which basically, oh my god, I read so much. Like, I read all the Hansard from the 80s up to now, and conveniently, I think it was like the 30th of January or something, like a few weeks ago, Parliament revisited the topic, so I was like, oh, topical. So that was actually really interesting, like, to read what's going on now, because there hadn't really been anything on it since 2008. So now, it's just a case of having to write this chapter up. This chapter's due on the 23rd of Feb, so I've got a few days, but she did say, my dissertation supervisor, she was like, okay, I want a full chapter, and then I was like, I've got essays due, can it be note form? She was like, yeah, note form's fine, and it's not graded, it's just sort of like to give us feedback. So she's gonna get some bullet points. Sorry Zoe, but you are. I'll give you an overview of what the law is, just for anyone that cares. So basically, the point of this chapter is chapter 2, and it's entitled, What is the Law on Gene Editing in the UK? And it basically is going to look at the history of the legislation, which is the Human Fertilisation Embryology Act of 1990, amended by the 2008 version, which is the current law. Looking at that and looking at how that came to be, looking at the ethical issues that they considered at the time of drafting, and then the current ethical issues, like, on whether they're still the same, and then whether the law should be changed and like the impact of changing it. That's basically it. So the gist of the law is that there was a report in 1984 called the Warnock Report, and that basically covered all of the ground for the Human Fertilisation Embryology Act. Within that legislation, there's no actual mention of gene editing, because like at that time they hadn't mapped the human genome yet. They didn't really know what gene editing is. It was a bit like far in the future, so they didn't explicitly mention anything about it, but there are like bits of the legislation that cover it, if you know what I mean. For the purpose of like science and research and stuff, you can experiment on embryos, therefore you can gene edit on them, but only up to 14 days, and then obviously you have to destroy them. So, and then there's a whole right to life malarkey attached to that, obviously. So there was that report, then led to a shitload of Hansard, and then there was the legislation that came out in 1990, then more Hansard in like early 90s, and then nothing really until like mid-2000s, and then there was a whole thing of when they mapped the human genome that they were like, oh, let's start fiddling about with it. And then that's when all the ethical issues kind of came back, because people were like, yeah, well, if you start like editing people, then is that fair? Like, who's going to get it? You know, is it going to lead to eugenics? Is it going to lead to another Hitler movement? Blah, 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 that whole thing. Fun, light-hearted stuff. Then like a month ago in 2020, they revisited it, and then they kind of looked at all the ethical issues to see like whether we should do it. The ethical issues that they mentioned in the 1984 report and the ones that they mentioned in the 2020 Hansard are slightly different, which is, like, for me, interesting. There are certain things that are the same, but then there are certain things like the right to life, which was really prominent in the 80s, which wasn't mentioned at all really in the 2020 Hansard. And then I'm basically arguing like the law should change, but don't know what it should change to, because how do you predict what the results are going to be, and how do you then create legislation to combat any challenges that might come up? Like, you can't. And passing legislation is like, it takes a long time, so the science is going to develop much faster than the law, so it's about balancing that and having a law that's not too restrictive so the science can develop and flourish, but also that is restrictive enough so that the science isn't abused. But like, I have no answers. But yeah, I want to basically put all of that into 3,000 words of notes, 2,000 words of notes. Oh god, I look tired. Okay, it's the 23rd of February, and I've basically just written my chapter that I'm going to send to Zoe. It's basically, as I said, all the legal analysis stuff. So we can actually submit one chapter or like portions of other chapters, but only up to 3,000 words. So I ended up doing, I think it was, let me have a look. I ended up doing 2,000 words for the legal stuff and like 1,000 words for the ethical stuff. So I combined my chapters 2 and 3 and sent them both, just so I could get feedback on them both. So this is kind of what it looks like. So it starts with my contents page. Pause this if you care and want to know what I'm writing about. And then me doing a little note to her being like, don't worry, I'm going to explain all the abbreviations, soz, it's in notes, didn't have time. Anyway, yeah, and then here's basically the gist of it. So I basically like put what it's doing, what the source was, and then like what the source kind of said and what I think about the source. Yeah.
Like, it's note form, but in my humble opinion, I like to believe that it's like extensive notes. I'm sure when I said to her like she's going to get bullet points, I like to think that she expected more brief notes than this. She probably didn't, but yeah, so I'm just happy that's done. I'm going to email this over to her now, and then I have a meeting with her in 2 weeks, I think, like 10th or something, 9th of March-ish, then, a couple of weeks, to discuss this. I'm kind of just like chilling until that meeting, because I don't really want to start anything or do anything anymore if she says in that meeting that it's all wrong and I don't know what I'm doing, which is likely. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So it's now the 9th of March, so it's a little later in this journey. I just come back from my dissertation supervision meeting, which I think is going to be the last one because of strikes and the chaos that has ensued for the last month. So basically it's a good meeting though. It always annoys me a little bit, sorry Zoe if you watch this, but like it always annoys me, her feedback, because I'm the type of person that doesn't really respond well to like positive feedback. I like somebody to go in and give me 1,000 things that are wrong with the essay, so then I like can improve. But like they weren't allowed to give us an actual numerical grade, they were just kind of giving feedback, and all she really said was, yeah, seems like it's going on the right lines, it seems like you know what you're doing, you should try and get this published when you've written it. And I was like, so I'm gonna take that as a good sign, Zoe, but how good is good? Like literally in this meeting I was like, but Zoe, am I doing it right? Because I don't know what I'm doing. You know, in summary, it went well. I just need to turn that like 2,000, 3,000 word bullet points into an actual like written chapter, which honestly I'm just gonna leave until like April, May, because the way things are looking now, I will have like 5 weeks to do my dissertation and literally just have nothing else on. Yeah, so that's basically like the plan. I'm not really going to do anything now until like the start of April, because I've just got 3 other essays due in the next like 3 weeks. And to be honest, I don't really want to be doing dissertation stuff, and all I need to do now is research for my chapters 3 and 4, which essentially is just like a 4,000 word essay. So when you really think like, okay, I've got to research and write a 4,000 word essay, and I've already done half the research, bear in mind, and then just write it, and I've got 5 weeks, there's no point in me doing it now. So that's how I'm justifying it. But yeah, I'm going to end this video here, and the next episode will pick up, I suppose, in like a month's time, when I'm actually writing and researching for like the latter half of my dissertation. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next week. I'll see you next time. Actually, no, I'll see you on Wednesday. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye guys.